Mega Building H2. Floor 24. Just to make sure there weren't any traps or eyes on the elevator, I went up to the floor above. Funnily enough, it wasn't hard to see what section of the building below that was claimed by the scavs. As I circled around, looking down into the massive open drop that made up the center of the mega buildings, I could see the section that they had taken. The lights were broken, the walls looked like they had been attacked with a sledgehammer. Then there was the smell. Blood. As I walked above the area, I scoped it out, marking the holes in my mind as potential entrances, or killing fields the scavs had set up. I took note of elevator that was stopped right there next to the claimed section. I would bet 50 eddies that they had hacked into that elevator to keep anyone else from using it. A way to transport their goods up to their hacks or clinic. The elevator would likely be watched. An instinctive thought entered my mind. If they had the tech ability to hack an elevator to keep it locked down, then they definitely had cameras for security. I found the place I was going to slip in. My knowledge of parkour told me this was an easy jump. I climbed over the barrier, what little it was, and simply dropped 10 feet, and I was grabbing onto the concrete barrier of the floor below with barely a sound. It was a little tough to hold myself from falling, but Body 5 turned it into a simple trick. I hadn't felt a lick of fear at potentially messing it up and falling. I peeked over the railing still hanging over a few 100 feet drop as I glanced onto the floor. The fact a lot of the apartments had their doors busted open told me a lot. I guess they had made sure no one else lived on this floor, at least in this section. My eyes narrowed looking for any sign of a camera or alert system. Nothing. I slipped over as quietly as I could and hurried to the first apartment. The door was already open. Broken in fact, and I had to force it a bit just to be able to slip through. The smell of old blood told me everything that happened here. Broken doors and blood stains tell a frightening story. Unfortunately, this apartment wasn't connected to the scavs clinic, so I would have to keep going. I slipped back out and started stalking along the apartment's fronts. The hallways splitting off leading to deeper sections were checked with a few quick peeks before I slipped past them, closer and closer to the section that was obviously their main setup. It was closest to the elevator. It was also barricaded a bit, made to look like trash build-up, but it was obviously done on purpose. A pile of garbage and old equipment blocking off the walkway that went around the interior of the building. As I approached, I heard voices, ducking down to hide behind the trash barricade. Russian voices. I rolled my eyes. I didn't have a translator chip, so I had no idea what they were saying, but they were walking over to the elevator from down a hall, and in a few moments the elevator rocked to life and started heading down. The noise was perfect. I moved. A bit of parkour allowed me to swing out over the massive drop to get around the trash barricade without a sound. Now on the other side of the barricade, I hurriedly slipped up to the interior wall and peeked down the hallway the scavs had just come from. A camera was looking down the hall. Damn. Looks like I had been right. They kept an eye on the elevator. I considered hacking the camera, but I had no angle to start scanning to get its information, much less to start the hack. I would have to go around instead. As I looked around, I noticed my entrance. I could see a hole busted into the wall that looked like they might be using it to shoot out at anyone coming up in the elevator that they didn't welcome. Like a crew coming to clear them out. Or the NCPD actually doing something for once. I needed to get over there. I looked around before sighing. My parkour instincts kicking and showing me a path. A very annoying path. I walked back along the trash barricade, hit the concrete barrier that would barely keep anyone from falling into the abyss that was the center of the mega building, and slipped over it. Then I shimmied sideways, until I hit the elevator shaft. The metal had plenty of places to grab, so I climbed on. Down below the barrier the camera couldn't see me as I shimmied my way around the entire elevator shaft until I was on the other side. Then just a bit more climbing and I was clear of the hallway's vision, and I climbed back over. I took a moment hiding behind some garbage to catch my breath and work out the tension in my arms. Couldn't have my arms be tired for what came next. I moved to the hole. Peeking in, I noticed I was right. An HMG was resting against a table looking outwards. The room was empty, looked like a bathroom they had smashed apart to make space for their little bunker. I had to be quiet, slipping in since I was more than small enough to slip through the hole. I did my best not to make a sound as the concrete under my belly shifted and crumbled, but I made it through. I looked to the HMG. Looked to the door. Looked to the HMG again. Tempting. But no. Those things are heavy as hell. Next time. I promised it as I shifted up to the doorway. The stupid bead blinds that were popular at least let me see out into the next room. A scav was set up on the couch in the next room, a beady wreath around his head. I slipped through the bead silent as a ghost. Stalking through the apartment, eyes roving every corner just to make sure there wasn't anyone else here. There wasn't. My knife slipped out of my sheath without a sound. The man didn't hear a thing. Didn't feel a thing. Not until my hand was over his mouth to muffle and my knife slipped into his neck. His quiet gasp muffled and weak death throes were ignored. I slipped my knife back into my sheath and settled a pillow against the man's neck, hiding the blood splatter. 500 XP gained. I moved on. My hunt had only just begun. Besides, right now, I was feeling pretty cool. The apartment wall had been broken out, connecting the apartments into one massive hive of rooms. I slipped over to the hole and started making my way through a dark hole that looked like it had once been a storage area for the apartment. The next apartment was brighter lit, and the smell of blood hit me. It also wasn't empty. Bodies stacked up and rip a dock chair with a corpse. Her chest ripped open like she was in an Aliens movie. And a man walking around the body with some weird device in his hands that looks like an ancient torture device. The lights were out in the storage room I was slipping through, giving me the perfect opportunity to move closer. As the man couldn't see his death, he looked into the hole in her chest and reached in, obviously trying to pull something loose. My hand gripped my knife again. He was tall. I would have trouble reaching his neck for a strike. I glanced around. My ninjutsu instinct told me to check every corner, every angle before striking. Even as my eyes kept him in sight, I stalked closer. He was bent over, looking into the girl's chest. I stalked right up beside him. I could tell the exact moment he would see me. Ninjutsu had taught me a lot about assassination. He glanced over at the exact moment my knife slipped into his neck. I had walked right up beside him, so I could deliver my blow. I kept with the blow, helping him drop to the floor, dragging him away from everything a bit so his death flailing wouldn't knock anything over. After a few moments his movements stilled. 500 XP gained. I looked around. This was definitely part of their main shop. I couldn't leave his body on the floor. I blinked when I saw it. Well, if it worked for video game protagonists everywhere. I dragged him over to a cold storage fridge. I had a feeling what I would find inside, and I was right. Bodies. I grimaced as I hefted him up. Definitely struggling with his weight. I really needed more body. But after a bit of back and forth I dumped him inside, shutting the fridge. I took a moment to back off, back into the dark storage room to rest up against the wall and regain control of my breathing. A minute. That's all I needed. Then I was good to go. I moved on. The Ripper room led to a much larger area. It had once been a living room, but everything had been torn out. It looked like it was a storage room, full of crates that I bet if I checked inside would be full of cyberware. I guess I found their stock. 3 people were hanging around the room. One was putting stuff into one of the crates. One was just looking out the window smoking. The third? He was the most dangerous. He looked gorged out. I grimaced at the realization they did have some serious muscle to back up their operation. I looked around. There was no way I could take out all 3 of them without noise, but as I looked around I realized I could get around them. I smiled as I stalked into the room, using the crates as cover to walk to my right towards where the entrance to the apartment would have been. These apartments had been absolutely broken apart. Obviously the scavs wanted their own path through things, and the large crates wouldn't even fit through the old apartment doors. So, walls, doors, and huge sections of each apartment had been ripped apart. Which also meant lights were down. I slipped into a dark section near the old entrance where the wall had been ripped apart. Noticing that I could continue on through a hole they had battered through the concrete, I slipped through, moving right past the massive room without a sound. The room connected was another bunker room. No HMG though, shame. This one was occupied instead. A beady wreath-clad scav again. These scavs were making it easy. He died just as quickly as the last one. 500 XP gained. With that I slipped out the exit to the bathroom bunker and looked around. The next room was full of computers and other equipment. Probably the place they set up their sales and buys. I glanced around, no one was in the room, but I could hear cutting from next door. As I walked through, something caught my eye and I snatched it up. A Mac stock. Didn't have any of those. Healing item get. The computer system was nice. A multi-monitor setup attached to a wall with a desk and chair under it. I could try to breach in, but I shook my head. Focus on the job of killing scavs. I could do that later if I really wanted. I moved past, following the noise of people sawing at something. As I poked my head into the next room I grimaced. This time the Ripper wasn't alone. A man and a woman working together to rip off the legs off a dead man. I really fucking hated these people. My brain was still cool, so my mind swiftly found a path through them. I drew my knife, and as I stalked into the room, I grabbed an object from a table. A bigger cutting tool, more like a pair of industrial shears than scissors, but it would do. I attacked, the knife in my right hand sliding right into the man's throat before I left it and swiped at the woman. 500 XP gained. I was off. No. I realized she had dodged too fast to be natural. She had jerked her head back, moving almost blurring fast for half a second before she realized what had just happened. She cursed loudly, yelling something in Russian. I threw my knife. She wasn't fast anymore. It whistled for half a moment before appearing in her chest with a dull thunk. She gasped, her legs failing her suddenly. 100 reflex XP gained. 500 XP gained. Okay. Ninja mode disengaged. I moved to the next room. A guy was already grabbing a rifle off a desk when I slipped in. He was scrambling for a rifle on a table across from him when I raised my pistol. The retort echoed through the apartments as I fired again and again, until the man fell to the floor. 500 XP gained. Level up achieved. 1 stat point gained. 1 skill point gained. I dropped the magazine and reloaded quickly. Well, since this scav was kind enough to pull out something a bit heavier than my pistol, I rushed across the room grabbing the rifle. Instantly my head knew what it was. Knockouter D5 Copperhead. It was the AK of the future. I spun. I could hear footsteps approaching. Heavy footsteps. I looked around. The room I was in was the last unit in the row. There wasn't a second exit. So this is where I would have to make a stand. I raced back across the room, using the doorway to the Ripper room set up. Rifle raised up and pointed, but I could hear the Borg moving. Basically doing the same thing on the opposite doorway. Intermittent Russian called out as the three scavs talked to each other. Well, if you wanted to post up near the doorway. I grabbed a frag grenade from my chest rig, ripping the pin out with my teeth, which actually hurt a bit and wasn't nearly as easy as the movies made it seem. I popped the grenade, holding it for half a second to cook before chucking it across the room. My reflex and ninjutsu helped make the grenade land generally where I wanted it to as it hit the doorway and fell into the computer room. But before it went off, it was suddenly spiraling into the Ripper room. Did the Borg seriously kick it? Asshole. I jerked back and the massive thump of the grenade going off in the room rolled past me. A few moments later something in Russian was called out mockingly. I don't speak Russian. I answered back completely flat. Then a surge went up my spine. Danger sense. I was spotted. I jerked back, landing flat on my back just in time for a massive chunk of the wall I had been standing against disappeared. I held back a curse, letting the cool feeling surging through my nerves keep my calm. Tech shotgun? Tech shotgun. I popped a grenade off my rig, quietly pulling the pin. Do you understand Russian now? The voice called back mockingly. A rough older man, obviously laughing. He thought he got me. I smiled. I heard his foot thunk. I popped the trigger on the grenade, letting it cook. I felt completely calm. My heartbeat didn't even stutter as I held the cooking grenade long past where I should have. Then, as if I had done this a million times, I chucked it through the hole he had just blown through the wall. Half a second was all the time he had. A moment to start cursing in Russian before the grenade made it through the hole and exploded. I rolled away. Plaster and concrete shattered over me as the wall came down. My ears were ringing, but I brought up the rifle I had stolen, and as soon as I managed to roll to my knees I started firing into the smoke and dust. I could see the bullets make divots through the dust, but I realized after half a magazine I wasn't able to tell if I was hitting anything. So I leapt to the side, rolling until I was behind a desk just in case. Which was smart because the sound of a double-barrel shotgun ripping through the room, smashing concrete as it went right through where I had been a moment before, told me I hadn't gotten him. Again more Russian was called out, although it wasn't the Borg, but I got the gist. Kill her this time? No. Niet was some of the only Russian I knew after all. He thunked into the room like the fucking Terminator, already reloading his shotgun. I tossed my last grenade. I didn't pull the pin though. As he moved to kick it back towards me, I rose up. Boya staring straight at him, his shotgun out of position as he kicked the grenade back. We had a moment. A simple frozen moment in time as his eyes locked with mine. I could see it. The frozen moment he realized he had fucked up. The moment my Boya kicked, breaking my arm but sending a bullet with more than enough force to crack his chrome. He was actually smiling a little as the bullet struck. 1000 XP gained. Then everything was moving again. I was moving again. Dropped the Boya because my right arm wasn't strong enough to holster the damn thing. I raced over to the dropped grenade. Popped the pin with my teeth again. Ow! I tossed the grenade with every inch of the accuracy I had ground. The grenade ducked through the Ripper room, and into the computer room. The room that I hoped the two other scavs were hanging around in, waiting for their Borg to take me out. I breathed for a few moments, wincing at the feeling of my arm even as the pain was fading into prickly ice. And then the thump of the grenade echoed through the building. I moved. Not waiting for a moment, I dashed through the Ripper room, power sliding into the room with the computer terminal. The two scavs were shocked from the grenade, having jumped out of the way to survive it, but they weren't stupid. Even as my pistol rose up and started shooting, they shot back. I winced when I felt a bullet strike me, and then two. Yet my bullets were hitting them as well. One scav went down. 500 XP gained. Yet the second scav and I were facing each other, both of us low to the ground. Both of our guns raised. We started firing. Bullets whizzed past me as I tried to roll to avoid more rounds, my Unity barking over and over until finally it clicked down. We both were on the ground. I was gasping as I struggled to move. That was a lot of blood. I dropped my Unity even as I felt myself wavering. I was dying. I coughed, blood rolling out of my throat. I fumbled with my pocket, finally pulled out the Mac stock with shaking hands. I inhaled it and instantly the hazy feeling disappeared. I could feel the bullet holes not close, but stop bleeding. Although I could see that they were scabbing over. Healing. I rose up, looking over to the scav who looked just like I had been a moment before. Leaning up against a desk, bleeding out from multiple gunshot wounds. His eyes though. He had seen. He looked at me in horror as I reached behind my back and pulled out a magazine. I picked up my Unity and reloaded it as I took a few steps closer. Then I put a bullet in his eye. 500 XP gained. I stood there after just catching my breath. I felt cool, but I also felt tired. Took a few tired steps out into the large room. The large room full of crates probably loaded with cyberware. I flopped onto the couch the Borg had been resting on before and just breathed for a few minutes. How am I still alive? I asked as I zoned out. What the fuck had I just done? I wasn't some elite special operative or something. Okay, I could shoot a gun with an okay level of skill, but I had just... How did I know to throw the grenade without pulling the pin? I hadn't even thought. I just did. Cold blood had left me without any hesitation. Pain and fear, even anger, hadn't played any part. Just a cold clinical calculus. I had put in a few points into ninjutsu before going into this den, but I was actually wondering if I should have put it into cold blood. I raised my hands up to wipe my face only to wince. While the max stock had seemed to give me a gamer-style heal, at least enough to put me back to alive status, my arm was still broken, and I still had some bullet holes. It had stopped me from bleeding out, and healed parts of my holes, but not all the way. I looked down at my chest, at the holes punched through my Netrunner suit. Damn it. That was going to be expensive to fix. So much for the armor as well. I rose up and started searching around. They had to have a place with medical supplies somewhere, and I was right. In a corner I found a med kit and popped it open. instantly inhaling the max stock and sighing as my bullet holes healed up more, although it would be obvious I had been shot still. There were still wounds where I had been shot. Wait, did that mean I had bullets in me still? Damn it. I would have to get to a Ripper to check. How was I supposed to ask that? Hey Ripper, can you tell if I still have bullets in me from these holes that just happened? I mocked myself before sighing. Well, actually I probably need to stop at a Ripper anyways, huh? I couldn't help but admit as I looked over the crates all over the room. I walked over to one and popped it open, only to wince. Legs. I moved on to the next crate. Arms. Synth muscle. The next one had little boxes that when I opened up I instantly closed back down. Eyes. I muttered with a shiver. I looked over the crates. Fuck. That was a lot of product. A lot of cyberware. Okay Motoko, you idiot. You cleared out the scavs. Now how do you get this stuff out of here? I realized I hadn't actually thought that far. Motoko, kill scavs and numbers go up. Fuck. That was about as far as my stupid brain had thought this through. I was going to have to call in help. Help that was going to ask questions. Fuck it. I had nearly died, but no one needed to know that. I could just fake it. Yeah. I would just lie. A lot. I made a call. Toko. Save me from boredom. Club? Hey Hiromi. Can you get Ichi and the gang together and find a bigger vehicle than your bikes? I need a couple trucks or something. Okay, I am suddenly very interested in what my cute Motoko is talking about. What is going on? It's hard to explain and I don't really want to talk about over the line. Can you do it? I promise there will be eddies in it. Well, I would come no matter what, but that will get the boys moving. Alright, where to? Just get to Mega Building H2, and try to keep it quiet. That would be preem. I'll get the boys moving, we have Omaida's van. That enough? No. Rent or hell steal a cargo truck if you have to. We got a lot of shit to move. The line was quiet for a moment as I looked out the windows watching the city far below. I am so interested right now. You have no idea. Okay, whatever craziness you got going on I'm in. Thanks Hiromi. Really. I appreciate it. The line ended and I took a moment to look around, finding all kinds of stuff that had my looter's instincts going crazy. I started bringing it back to the central room until I stumbled upon a shower that still worked. I quickly washed up, trying to get most of the blood off me, but wincing when I realized that I still had bullet holes all over me. That was going to be difficult to explain. I quickly zipped up my jacket hoping that it would hide most of the holes. I looked around and found some bandages of all things in a med kit. With a bit of arranging the bullet holes were hidden, and you couldn't see that I had been shot now. It just looked like I was wearing a white shirt under my leotard. Hopefully no one would wonder why my new Netrunner leotard had holes in it. Figuring that was good enough, I decided to start looting. I was searching through the poor guy had flatlined for any goodies he might have in his pocket when I heard it. The elevator. It left a quiet rumble through the floor as it settled. The elevator that was locked down so only scavs could use it. Hiromi and Ichi's crew wouldn't be here yet. Here I go murdering again, I whispered as everything went cold. Instantly my mind had a thought and every part of me was nodding along. I ran. Sprinted through the different rooms over the dead bodies and through broken walls before I returned to that little bunker they had set up near the elevator. I crept up and unfortunately whoever had come up had already walked out of the elevator. But that was fine. I slipped out through the hole as quickly and quietly as I could until I was once more on the mega building's outer walkway. Then I pulled the HMG through the hole. I wheezed a little at how heavy it was as it caused a twinge in my left arm that made me wince, but I fought through it anyways. How did Becca handle this thing? Oh right. Cyber arms. Gonna have to get me some cyber arms. Because as I walked down the hall I caught the sight of the scav walking into their little den. That room led to the first Ripper room. Which meant I had about 30 seconds before they realized something was up. So I hurried down the hall, not caring too much about making noise. This was their home base. They expected people here. I crept through the Ripper room, my face turning into a gentle smirk as I stopped just before entering the big room. I took a breath. Then I walked out around the doorway. 3 men. One was carrying a man over his shoulder. Fuck. They had a victim. Fine. I just wouldn't shoot at that one, I adjusted my aim and pulled the trigger. You know, in the game the HMG was used every once in a while. It was an okay thing. A heavy weapon you could pick up and carry around for a bit until it ran out of ammo, or you had to do anything else. It was okay. Not great. Not amazing. Just okay. Fun though. This wasn't a video game. This was a fucking HMG fired from the hip by a 14-year-old unaugmented girl. I only weighed a tad over 100 pounds. Did I forget my broken left arm? Yes, I did forget my broken left arm. That is until about half a second after I started firing. Then I remembered it. Oh, did I remember it? So yeah. Firing the HMG instantly fucked me up, kicking me back and forcing me to push myself into a wall to keep from falling on my ass. Too bad for the poor scav that I had been aiming at though. He turned into fucking hamburger. Turns out these HMGs fired explosive rounds. 500 XP gained. The other two leapt for cover, which didn't help when I manhandled the HMG arcing over towards the scav that wasn't carrying an innocent. Explosive ammunition doesn't care about light cover. I kept firing. The wall I was pushing the gun against to find any sort of stabilization practically crumbled from the treatment, but it did let me arc the fire straight through the second scav attempt to hide behind an overturned table. 500 XP gained. I dropped the HMG. I couldn't shoot the third scav without hitting the victim, and I didn't think I could have held it for much longer anyways. I drew my unity with my good arm and rushed him. The scav was still screaming something in Russian as I leapt over the couch he had been hiding behind. The poor victim looked like shit on the floor beside him, obviously having been dropped like a sack when the firing started. But the scav? He was cowering. 4 rounds into him before he realized I was there and he stopped moving. 500 XP gained. I breathed. Just breathed, catching my breath before I rolled forward and grabbed my arm. Phew. Dash. The victim was still unconscious. I checked them out and they didn't have any shards in their system or anything. Probably just drugged or beaten unconscious. So I hauled them up and put them on one of the newly destroyed couches before settling in myself. My arm twinged a bit whenever I moved it. I think I broke it. I needed a nap, but needed to get the crates full of cyberware out first. I sighed, hoping Hiromi hurried up. The bodies were starting to smell. Worse than the room already smelled. While I waited, I checked over my stats since I had nothing else to do. Considering how much shooting I had just done, I wasn't surprised to see my stats had gone up a lot. Annihilation skill level up. Annihilation skill level up. 1 perk point gained. Annihilation skill level up. I blinked at that one. Guess firing an HMG had leveled me up quick. I stopped to check out the perks for a moment. This time there was a pretty quick delineation between shotgun perks and machine gun perks. Luckily just a few options from the top was what I wanted. I picked it immediately. Recoil reduction. Know how to best reduce the effect of recoil on aim and your body. That would hopefully mean when I shot the boy my arm stopped breaking. I would have to test that though. I winced at that idea. So I moved on. Reflex leveled up. This was a relief. Reflex was so determined by my skills since I didn't have a direct way to level it. Now I was at Reflex 4. That meant I had even more reflex skills to level. Well, those that hadn't already. Blade skill level up. Handguns skill level up. Assault skill level up. Handguns was once more maxed out at Handguns 4. Blades was at 3, and Assault 3. So I still had some grinding to do with those. Then I looked down a bit more on the list. Cool leveled up. Cool leveled up. Cool 6. I guess killing all these scavs was pretty cool. I sighed. No wonder I was still calm and collected. Sitting around the dead bodies of the scavs wasn't even ruffling me. I shook that away, looking at the last 2 skills. Ninjutsu skill level up. 1 perk point gained. I had only gained 1 level of ninjutsu. I guess Cool had leveled up once early on when I was still sneaking around, but since I had stopped using stealth mid-fight it didn't have a chance to level along with Cool. Cold Blood though? Cold Blood skill level up. Cold Blood skill level up. Cold Blood skill level up. 1 perk point gained. Cold Blood skill level up. 4 levels. Cold Blood 6. It was now my highest stat and skill. I rubbed my eyes a bit before opening the perks menu. Ninjutsu first. The list hadn't changed much. 1 or 2 additional perks that seemed to have unlocked due to other skill trees. Scrolling through the list, I ended up finally deciding to keep focusing on the stealth aspect of ninjutsu instead of the combat angle. Which is why I kept circling around to this perk. Cyber Ninja. After breaching a system, automatically upload a demon that makes you more difficult to see for members of the network. Increases based on skill level of breaching. A combo perk. Breach and ninjutsu. A perk I hadn't had before. Being able to sneak past people after using breach on them? That was already something I wanted to do. But it also meant I really needed to level my breach and quick hack, so I could hack and breach on the run. I looked around at the room full of cyberware. I wondered if they had anything here I could use, but I shook that off to refocus. Because I still had one more perk to choose. Cold Blood. I started looking down the list. It didn't take me long to find what I wanted. Fearless Chill. Fear is a powerful enemy. Good thing your enemies realize you have none. Fear is your ally. From the description it read more like a diplomacy skill. If while under cold blood people realized I wasn't afraid, that might be a pretty strong advantage. Fearless people were scary after all. You never knew what they would be willing to do. I picked it. I had already taken a perk to keep my body calm in terrible situations, maybe one to keep my mind calm would be a good combination too. I looked at my skill points. The desire to spend them was there, but I held off for now. After this I would probably do some normal grinding for a while. I might even have the eddies to try working on my technical skill. That would be a nice thing to level. So I would hold off for a bit, figure out what I wanted to raise. Intelligence, or maybe more cool and stealth? Ringing. I smiled as Hiromi finally called me back. Hiromi. You here? Well, I'm at the ground floor in the garage. You said the south side, right? Yeah, the south elevator. You near it? It's right here, but the damn thing is broken, Choom. Yeah, they had it locked down. Give me a minute, should be able to send it down from here. I quickly rose, noticing the victim was still out, and hurried to the elevator. Just like I expected, the control panel on the elevator was completely destroyed, having been pulled off and modified. An absolute mess of wires and connections. Unfortunately, my tech knowledge was zilch. It was the back of an elevator control panel. I had no idea how or what they had done. It took a minute of going over the wires trying to find what everything was connected to. Crafting experience gained. Skill not unlocked, no XP gained. Crafting unlocked. I blinked midway through as I got the alert. Nice but useless right now, I muttered as I continued following the wires until I finally found something strange. A box that wasn't supposed to be there. It even had buttons. I pushed one of them and nothing happened. Then the other. The elevator started going down. Finally. I grunted as I waited for it to hit the bottom. Ringing. Hiromi was calling again. Hey Choom. You sent it down. Yeah, go ahead and get on, and let me know when you are ready. I can bring it up. Ha. Our own personal elevator. Hear that, Ichi? We got our own ride. What? No, shut up Malcolm, you gonk. The call turned into arguing for a minute before I sighed. You ready for a lift, Hiromi? Huh? Oh yeah, we are all on. I rolled my eyes as I ended the call and pushed the other button, feeling the elevator start traveling upwards right after. I stepped back as I waited, before quickly looking myself over. I was mostly clean of blood, and the bullet holes in my netrunner leotard hopefully wouldn't draw too much attention. I wiped a hand through my purple hair one last time before standing casually, putting on a bit of coolness as the elevator finally made it to the top. Hi. Hiromi called as the elevator opened, looking around at the destroyed section of the building. I imagine it looked like one hell of a scene. Garbage barriers. Holes in the walls. Lights flickering in and out. I realized then that there were some bloody footprints from my surprise attack on the second group of scavs walking away from the hole in the wall and then back into the apartment. I must have stepped into a bloody pool when I ran. Just fly casual Motoko. Glad you all could make it. I could use the extra hands, I offered as I flicked my head back towards the apartment. What the hell did I just walk into? Omaida asked, looking very uncomfortable as he looked over the area. He was even fingering his pistol on his hip as he looked around. "Don't worry. There are no more threats here. It's safe," I told him directly, trying to sound reassuring. "I don't think it was though." "Motoko. Chuma. Chumiest? What's going on?" Hiromi asked, looking around nervously as well. "Scavden," I answered back. "You are the cleanup team," I told her, which to my surprise caused all four of them to tense up and draw their weapons like scavs were going to come out of the walls. "Fuck Motoko, you can't ask us to his a Scavden without letting us know first," Ichi hissed with a whisper as he started checking the corners nervously. And even Hiromi was looking a little freaked out. "Cleanup. Not extermination," I said after a few moments trying to cut through their freakout. "Place is already cleared. Just needed some hands to move the loot," I explained, and while that at least causes them to stop freaking out so much, they were still looking around. "Who helped you clean the place out, Motoko?" Ichi asked, and even Hiromi jumped on me after resheathing her katana that she had drawn. "Yeah, I thought we were a crew." "You went and got some other mercs to help out? Or did you join a new crew? You can't betray us like that, Motoko," Hiromi whined. "It was just me though," I answered calmly. "That's why I called you all in. I needed help looting everything," I told them as I gestured down the hall. "Come on, stop playing around," I said calmly as I turned and walked down the hall. The door was already open as I entered, ignoring the first Ripper room with the dead woman still on the table. Once we were out of here I would alert the NCPD. I don't know if they would actually do anything or not, but maybe they would. Either way I had no idea what to do with the body. I could hear gasps of shock at the sight and whispers breaking out among the group as they noticed the already dead woman. I wondered what they would think when they saw the main room. I walked in and looked around. It was a bit of a mess. The three dead scavs were one thing, well they weren't one thing anymore, more a few different chunks. Anyway, you could see the other two in the computer room from where I stopped too. I turned around only to blink. No one was there. I looked down at the victim who was still unconscious. "My chums are a bit unreliable," I admitted to him before turning around and going back into the Ripper room. The crew was all looking around the room in horror. "Guys? The stuff is in here." I pointed out my reappearance, causing Malcolm to jerk back from the woman's corpse that he had been morbidly looking into her open chest. "This is crazy," he muttered, but he finally followed me and everyone else put down whatever junk they were playing with. "Seriously, Ichi, I don't think we need a pair of surgical clamps." The group followed me into the main room and instantly I could hear Malcolm start cussing. "Son of a bitch. That's a dead scav," he called out, hurrying over to the legs of the scav I had caught with the HMG. Only to stutter to a quick stop. "I mean it's half a dead scav. The other half of him is over there." I pointed to the other side of the couch they were standing next to. "Also Omaeda, don't touch that. It's mine," I tell him, looking over my shoulder to see Omaeda checking out my HMG. "That was going with me." Omaeda looked up, his hand inches from touching the gun before back to the gun and back to me before raising his hands off it and standing up. "Wait. Is this one alive?" Hiromi asked, having been looking around as well. "Yeah, that was a victim. They were carrying him up. I think he's drugged up. When we get out of here we need to call the NCPD, let them take care of it." "Damn, Motoko. You seriously assaulted a Scavden and took out 3 scavs? You got lucky there weren't any more." Ichi mentioned, having looked over the couch to see the second scav I had mowed down with the HMG. "There were more than 3. 1 in the first Ripper room. 2 in this room, along with a Borg. 1 in the last room I think was their boss. The 2 that were in the other Ripper room. Then these 3 showed up after. I think that's it? Oh no, wait, the 2 gonks that were scrolling a BD. 1 in the front, and another down that way." I told them, counting on my fingers as I tried to remember all of them. I had been more focused on making sure I got them all at the time than counting. Besides, they were scavs. It took me a moment to actually remember all of them. The room was quiet as I looked up from my fingers and noticed everyone staring at me. "What?" They all jerked like they had stuck a fork in a power socket. "Nothing." "Yeah, is cool as all." "Preem." Hiromi offered with a big smile that looked a little off. I gave them all a flat look, but I could see Ichi's group kind of closing off as they stepped away a bit and clumped together. I could hear them whispering to themselves for a while, but I gave them their space. I did sort of drag them into a charnel house. They deserved a few minutes to sort things out. Hiromi was also distracted, poking her head around a bit, checking the room over, looking through some of the crates with a wrinkled nose. Finally I noticed they were all splitting up a bit to look around, and I called out. Anyways, let's move these crates first. I don't want something to happen like the NCPD showing up and not letting us loot them. Crates first. And then we can go around at our leisure to see if there is anything you want. Should be lots of weapons and stuff lying around, I told the group as I walked over to the crate nearest me. That caused everyone to gather back up, and Ichi's crew seemed more at ease. What's in the crates? Malcolm asked, curious, and I could tell the others had probably a good idea already, but I shrugged and lifted the lid. Oh, that's a lot of legs. The crates are full of the scavs' loot. We are taking it for ourselves, I tell them. Thankfully it wasn't like full hacked-off legs, but all the interior cyberware packaged in plastic ready for resale. Oh, that's why you said bring vehicles with space, Malcolm responded. I'm surprised you even brought us in. This is a huge payday, Chum. My arm is a little messed up, so I can't really move the crates myself, I told him, causing Hiromi to squawk as she ran over to me, looking me over as if she could see the injury. What happened? Did the gonks shoot you or something? She talked quickly, looking me over, but I just raised my left arm. I had to shoot my boya to flatline their Borg. It messed up my arm. It's fine, just stings. Which was the truth from a certain point of view. Boya? She asked suddenly. What's a boya and why would it mess up your arm? Geez, Muotuoko, you are a worse storyteller than Ichi. Hey. Boya is a pistol, Hiromi. It has a strong kick. Feels like it's breaking my arm every time I shoot it, but it's good for killing Borgs. It punches right through their armor, I explained simply as I finally pushed her hands from my arm to the crate. Let's get this stuff moved, okay? I really don't want to lose all this chrome. Some of it might be usable by us. Wait. You mean we can use this? Malcolm asked, suddenly perking up from where he had been poking around in another crate, his face split into an eager look towards me. Help me get it out of here and secured, and we can figure it out. I'll get first dibs, but otherwise I don't mind. Just don't go crazy, I told him, and suddenly the three boys looked a lot more eager. Not just Teddy's on the mind but chrome. PSHH, most of this is junk. I doubt we will want any of this chrome, Hiromi muttered, but I shrugged. Still worth Eddie's somewhere. Maybe? What's the best way to sell chrome like this? I asked Hiromi quietly, who looked at me like. Well, like I was a gonk. Wait, you cleared this den and you wanted us to grab all this junk, and you have no idea what to do with it? I hadn't thought that far ahead. Yet. I'm thinking about it now though. You are such a gonk. She scoffed. I have some ideas. Let's talk to Ichi, though he has more connections that might help than I do. Cool. Wanna help move the crates? Nah. I'll stick with you, let the boys earn their readies. Hiromi offered me with a fox grin that I couldn't help but chuckle at. We both took a moment watching the boys, who were already grabbing crates and hauling them over to the elevator. The three were practically drooling at all the chrome, but Hiromi stopped paying attention to them once they were far enough away. Hiromi? I asked as she turned to look at me with a serious face. Motoko, what happened here? Did you take a job to hunt the scavs? Who even gave you the information? They were probably sending you to die, you know? No one. It wasn't a gig, Hiromi. I just learned there were some scavs here, and came to clear them out. That is crazy, she said slowly before going silent as she looked like she was trying to figure out what to say. Doing something like this is real edge runner stuff, Motoko. It's stuff people do that don't care if they die or not. You aren't. You've never been able to do something like this. I know you've been practicing with your guns a lot, but this is on a different level than going to the shooting range a couple times. Hiromi. She was super serious, looking honestly concerned about what I had done. I knew I could do it, so I did. June has been doing crazy stuff, so I knew I needed more experience, more chrome, more eddies. I need to be strong enough to help him when he finally bites off more than he can handle. I answered truthfully. That's what the other tiger claws are for, Motoko. It's what Ichi and his crew are useful for. It's what I am for. That is what Chums do. They do crazy dangerous things together. You shouldn't be rushing into something like this. especially not alone. She shook her head looking so confused. Why are you making me be the voice of reason? I'm supposed to be the rich girl slumming it, she said, almost growling at the end as she poked my side a bit. But I wasn't ticklish. Instead I just huffed a bit at her probing finger. I don't trust them to keep June safe, over whatever goal they have. To the Tiger Claws June is just muscle. To me June is my irreplaceable brother. I owe him a lot. You have to be alive to pay him back, Hiromi retorted, looking at the corpses in the room. Even if you are somehow really good at this. She looked around, seeing the one scav that was literally in two pieces from being cut in half by the HMG. Seriously good. I'll be careful. More careful. I quickly changed what I said as Hiromi looked like she was going to argue. I still don't understand how you did this, she muttered, and I didn't shrug, or make any notice. I couldn't explain, so instead I just stayed quiet, face firm. Hey, you gonna help or what? Malcolm called out suddenly, pulling us from our conversation as we looked. He was looking at Hiromi, irritated. Come on Hiromi, help out. This thing is heavy. Just move it yourself. Don't worry if you break your back, we will just give you a chrome one. Hiromi called out, joking, earning a rude gesture from the boy as he tugged and pulled the heavy crate across the floor. This was gonna take a while. I looked around myself, seeing the scavs on the ground, and the idea did reach my brain, but I shivered and put it away. Stripping bodies for chrome was a step too far.